Hello there. Welcome to my show, COVID-19 Update by Heerak. It's June 16, 2020, and UCLA and other trimester colleges are graduating in June. And as you know, a lot of high school students are graduating in June throughout the United States of America. And so it is graduation time, and we had a West Point graduation on Saturday where President Donald Trump spoke. That was just a few days ago. So it's that time, graduation. Georgetown May graduation was canceled. And all of us in clinical nurse leader program were very sad. But Georgetown was saying that they're going to have a graduation ceremony in August. And this was like in, I guess, April when they announced that they're canceling May graduation, but that they may have a graduation ceremony in August. So, so many of us went ahead and ordered our graduation gowns in the hope that we would have a graduation ceremony, in August. So I ordered my gown as well because I guess the deadline was like June 16th or something. And my graduation gown just arrived. So yeah, so this is my Georgetown graduation gown. Um, yeah, you could see like, yeah, you could see like my back. Yeah, so, and I have a special Georgetown thing here. But yeah, it's black tassel with black hat. This is like an edition, with the Georgetown emblem. But yeah, it's just yeah, maybe I can stand up. But anyway, yeah. So basically, yeah. So I think that we're like graduating, and August was supposed to be when we had our graduation ceremony. Um, but unfortunately, uh, all the ceremonies is not going to be taking place. I mean, COVID-19 has took my graduation away. I don't know if you read my poem, but I write a poem every Monday, new one, and I post it up on my Twitter page, which is Heerak for Congress, Heerak number 4 Congress. So www.twitter.com/Heerak4Congress. Um, yes, you can read my new poem every Monday. And I have a poem I wrote. It's called "The COVID-19 Took My Graduation Away," and I'm sure a lot of Americans are feeling this. I'm class of 2020, as you know. Um, you know, uh, and so you can identify. I mean, if you also class of 2020. I mean, I'm graduating with my master's degree in clinical nurse leader program at Georgetown University. But yeah, I mean, there are people who are graduating with uh, a bachelor's degree, their PhDs, their master's program in School of Foreign Service, master's degree from McCord School of public policy, uh, business school, MBA business program. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah. And there are a lot of different types of nursing programs. There's a Doctor of Nursing Practice, DNP, and Georgetown's creating a PhD in nursing. And Dr. Anderson was saying that it will start, I guess, either this fall or next fall. I guess it must be next fall because they would have to ask people to apply, right? So yeah, I'm actually thinking about applying for a PhD in nursing, working on you know, out of hospital cardiac arrest in oncology cancer patients. So that's something that I'm looking into. So I may apply for that program, you know, in the fall. I'm graduating with my 24 clinical nurse leader fellow students. So all of us together are 25. So I want to say congratulations to everybody in my clinical nurse leader program. Congratulations, clinical nurse leaders from Georgetown University, class of 2020. We did it, we did it, we did it. We have done it. So yeah, so we're, you know, we're very excited about graduating from Georgetown University with our master's degree in clinical nurse leader. As a clinical nurse leaders. We're taking our clinical nurse leader exam in August. I registered for that as well. Got a confirmation email back from Commission on Nursing Certification, which is the body that controls nursing certification. Yeah, so I'm all good to go. Yeah, that's at American Association for Colleges of Nursing. They're the accrediting agency, and they're located in Washington, D.C. It's a national accreditation agency for schools of nursing. And they actually have a pretty good webinar series on COVID-19. So I've been kind of watching those and participating in those webinars. And the whole profession of nursing has been hit hard. As you know, we do clinicals in the hospital setting, but because, you know, COVID-19 hit, majority of the hospitals are not letting any nursing students in for 3 reasons. Number one, they would be liable if a nursing student gets COVID-19 and die. You know, even if you sign a waiver, you could always sue through a lawyer, find a loophole and sue. And so hospitals know that. So they don't want to be liable for nursing students dying. So that's why they're kind of preventing nursing students from working in the hospital. Another reason why they are not allowing nursing students in is because hospitals are overtaxed with COVID-19 patients throughout America, some states more than others. So they can't like look after nursing students, right? Because they're professionals trying to save lives of COVID-19 patients. And having a nursing student, they're kind of participating in training nursing students, right? And they just don't have the resources to do that because many hospitals are overflowing with COVID-19 patients, especially in outbreak spots. So in order to free up time for the staff, nurses who are treating COVID-19, they just don't have the resources to kind of support nursing students getting trained in the hospital setting. And we call that clinicals. And the third reason why they don't want nursing students there is obviously they're going to do something wrong in terms of policy. I mean, you know, in any kind of emergency, you're kind of working around the protocols. Sometimes protocols are broken. And nursing students, if they're around, they could be subpoenaed to be witnesses. So let's say there are patients who die at Inova Fairfax Hospital from COVID-19, and the patient's family want to sue Inova Fairfax Hospital for wrongful death. And then they could subpoena nurses to testify. and they could subpoena, doctors. But if there were nursing students there on the floor, they could subpoena nursing students to testify. So generally, because nurses are hospital employees, they kind of a vested interest to kind of side with the hospital, right? But nursing students are not like that. They're not employees at Inova Fairfax Hospital. And, you just see all the things that nursing students say behind the backs of, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but oh yeah, there's a lot of griping and criticizing of hospitals. Like every hospital we did our clinical at, somebody has something to criticize and complain about. And not only that, like in the nursing school, and I'm sure our school is not the only one, professors actually ask you, what kind of things did you see that were not done properly in your clinical setting? And obviously, nursing professors have to ask that to kind of, number one, reorient us in case we saw something that wasn't supposed to happen. We tell our professor, and professor says, well, in X, Y, and Z scenario, that could be possible and allowed. Or she could just say, no, it's not allowed. You should not do that when you go and work for a hospital. So it's a didactic way to show us what should go on, because what actually goes on in a hospital is not always what should go on. So, I think all of us have complained about something at some point. I think it's not just us as a nursing student, but I think every nursing school, every nursing student kind of nitpicks because, they're learning the theory, they're not practicing. And theory and practice often differ, not just in nursing, but let's say you become a police officer. What you're taught to do, you don't always do in the field. And it's not just police officers and nurses. It's like firemen. They may have learned in their fireman school what to do, but when they actually go into the actual setting of fire, they may not follow the book. They might break some rules. And same with, people who are maybe construction workers. Maybe they've been trained to do X, Y, and Z, but in the real setting of construction, they may, they may not always exactly follow the regulation or rules to the letter. All right, it's like the business world as well. You might have learned things at MBA program in theory, but you go into the business world, you may do things that you were taught not to do. So our nursing professors always tell us, like, real setting hospital is different from what we learned in the books. And you have to be flexible depending on the circumstance. And right now, COVID-19 is a crisis situation. So a lot of rules are being broken. As I said, as a standard protocol, you were supposed to throw away all your PPE, your gloves, your mask, your gown, your cap. Everything has to be thrown away before you come out of the room. If it's like contact precautions, which COVID-19 would have. But people are reusing their N95 mask and, they're reusing stuff. They're not supposed to do that. It's against regulation, against protocol, because when you come out of the room with anything, you're bringing infection outside because this viruses and bacteria stick to PPE. So you're not supposed to bring it outside. So that's a good example of how the protocol in nursing is being broken. Infection control is being broken right now in all the hospitals in America, basically. And it's unfortunate, but it's a circumstance, right? We don't have enough PPE, so people are reusing PPE, which they should not be doing. So you can imagine how many other codes are being broken, technically being broken. So the problem is, yes, the circumstances is like that, but if a patient dies as a result of breaking some protocols, and if the patient sues the hospital for wrongful death, they could technically win the case in the court of law, right? They could say, well, my mother would not have died if they followed the protocol that was set, but because the protocol was broken, my mother died. And they could win millions of dollars for wrongful practice suit, right? Malpractice suit. And the nurses were there and they understand what's going on. So when they testify, they're going to probably say things to kind of show the context. And some may just like outright defend their institution. But nursing students don't have that loyalty to the hospital. So if somebody at Innova Fairfax Hospital, like nurses were breaking protocol, which they may do as COVID-19 rises and people die, and then the daughter or son who are lawyers or whatever bring a lawsuit, or they could hire a lawyer, then they could ask the hospital for a list of nursing students who are there on that day. They could subpoena these nursing students to testify as eyewitnesses, right? And especially if it's the children, they might have, if they allow visitors, they might have talked to these nursing students. So hospitals don't want that scenario where they become liable for millions of dollars in lawsuit, and then lawsuits they would have won just with their staff nurses, they will lose because students will generally not lie or hide anything, because there's no loyalty for student nurses, right? Like they're not working for Innova Fairfax. So if they see things that they think is wrong, they're going to talk about it among themselves. And then when they're called to testify, they're going to tell them exactly what they saw. And so hospitals are trying to protect themselves because a lot of people are dying from COVID, which means there will be a lot of malpractice lawsuits that could come. It may not come, but it could come. So some of the hospitals can go bankrupt if they lose these malpractice suits, right? Not only that, there is a real chance that nurses and nurse managers and doctors in the unit can go to jail if they actually broke protocol to the extent that would be deemed criminal by either OSHA, which is like the federal government agency that oversees safety issues, or other type of federal agencies like CDC or FDA, which overlooks regulations to protect human life. If there were violations that CDC, FDA, OSHA, or other agencies deem as not just mistakes, little mistakes, but major errors, violation in protocol, nurse managers could actually go to jail. I mean, especially if a lot of people die in that unit. So one of the ways that hospitals trying to protect themselves from not only civil liabilities where they have to pay for malpractice lawsuits, but from criminal liabilities where nurse managers go to jail, especially it may not happen now, but let's say there's a vaccine that comes out a year from now and people have vaccine, that's when the investigations will come, right? They will investigate every hospital. And then since nobody's, not too many people are dying from virus because of a vaccine, they're going to investigate hospitals that they feel have broken protocol. That's when the lawsuits will come, right? I mean, from your vantage point, vaccine is good, right? And yes, I think vaccine is very good too. But from a hospital's perspective, vaccine is not necessarily good. Do you know why? Because once vaccine comes, they're basically protected, not everybody, but majority are protected against COVID-19. So society will go back to normal, which means a lot of people are going to file malpractice lawsuits for their mother's death, right? I mean, or their father's death. That's coming. Especially in hospitals, where CNN or Fox News did an investigation and they uncover some violations of code. Yeah, they'll be sued. I mean, that's just, in time of peace, that's what people do, they sue. Like right now, because of COVID-19, courthouses are not functioning properly. So, and everything is just crazy. So people are not suing hospitals, right? But that will come once there's vaccine. You're going to have a flood of lawsuits against hospitals, doctors, lawyers. And so a lot of the hospitals are anticipating that. And so they don't want their nursing students there because nursing students generally nitpick. That's what they talk about, things that hospitals do wrong. But in times of peace, it's okay because, they're just kind of griping among themselves. And, they don't fully understand exactly what they're going because they're not, they're kind of looking at it from theory. Right? Theory and practice is completely different. Like what you learn as a police officer at police academy is completely different from what you see in the streets. People could try to kill you with a taser. I mean, what do you do? Do you let them tase you? And what if they tase you and they stab you to death, right? I mean, taser is a lethal weapon, right? Because they could taser you and then you're incapacitated. They could step on your neck. I mean, they could stab you. You could be, if you're incapacitated by taser, you're good as dead. So obviously, whoever is trying to taser, you're gonna shoot them, or you may be killed, right? Because they may just taser you and walk away, but they may taser you like in an area in your body which may end up killing you, or they may taser you and then stab you to death because they don't want witnesses, right? You don't know. We don't know. I mean, so like when a police officer, is learning something at police academy, he's taught to follow protocol, but in the field, and when his life is in jeopardy, he may do things that, because you have to make decisions at a split of a second. If somebody's pointing a taser at you, you may just shoot them. I mean, we're talking about a fraction of a second. So it's like that in the nursing world as well. Nurses are taught to follow certain protocol, but when there are emergencies like COVID-19, they may violate the protocol because you have to make decisions in a fraction of a second, right? And you may make the wrong decision, and it may be serious enough that the patient dies. So if only nurses are there, they're probably going to try to protect each other because they understand, sometimes things happen, mistakes happen. But if nursing students are there, they're probably going to tell everything. So some nurses will end up in jail, or hospital will have to pay like millions in a civil lawsuit case. So that's one of the reasons why hospitals don't want any students there, because they don't have a vested interest in the hospital. They're just there for like a few months, right? So they don't have any loyalty to the hospital. So I mean, it makes total sense why hospitals don't want students in a COVID-19 crisis when a lot of people are dying, because it's not like you're above the law during COVID-19. I mean, crisis is horrible, but you still have to keep the law. I mean, look at what's happening to the police officers. I mean, they risk their life every day, and like they, geez, they don't even want you to like protect themselves, right? That could happen to the nurses, So, I mean, the reason that the police officer who kneed George Floyd is going to prison is because it was videotaped, right? If nobody videotaped that, then he would not be going to prison. I'm not saying you should knee somebody for 8 minutes, but in a sense, people might have egged him on. Like if there was nobody videotaping him, he might not have kneed him at all. You know how like sometimes like people egg you on, like fight, kind of like that. And the people were videotaping him and like watching him. He had an audience. So maybe he felt like he needed to put on a show. I mean, we don't know what's going on in his mind, but obviously what he did is wrong. But all I'm saying is scenario is completely different. Number one, if there were no video cameras, video filming him, we would not have had any protest at all, right? Would you have protested if you didn't see that video? Of course not, right? Yeah, I mean, and so it's kind of like that. Like if you don't have any witnesses, you can't really go to jail. You need witnesses to go to jail, right? I mean, how are you going to go to jail if there's no witnesses? I mean, it's like any crime. You could commit a crime. If there's no witnesses, there's no evidence, you don't go to jail. There are people who've killed like 2-3 people and they're still walking around because nobody videotaped that. There's no evidence. They might have thrown away a gun in the Chesapeake Bay. There's no weapon. No, I mean, they can't trace you to anything. So they call that like a court case. There are a lot of cases in America where people committed crimes, but they walk free because there's no evidence. There's no video recording. So nobody can arrest you even. They can't even charge you. They can't even find you guilty because there's no evidence, right? I mean, it's like Nixon. If there was no video, like audio recording, he would not have been impeached. And it's ironically, he made his own videotapes or the audio tapes, right? He was indicted by his own audio tapes. Because Nixon was like, he's like, I want insurance. He thought it was going to help him. I mean, any idiot knows anything you document will be used against you in the court of law. You know what I'm saying? I mean, any idiot who is smart, I mean, anybody who's smart and not an idiot knows the moment you document something, that's the evidence that's going to put you in jail. Yeah. I mean, if you're smart, you're not going to have anybody videotape you, audio tape you, or take notes. Because the moment anybody takes notes, that's a document that can be used against you in the court of law. Yeah, that's how you go to jail. Because of evidence, right? So that's why hospitals don't want nursing students around. Because they know their nursing staff, some of them are going to make mistakes. And number one, whatever the nurses do, hospital is liable for because they're their employee. You know, they have a law for that. Yeah, anything a nurse does in the course of her employment as a nurse in a hospital, any mistakes she makes, any negligence, hospital is responsible for that. And obviously, hospital will not be found guilty if there are no witnesses, right? Because you need evidence to find the nurse guilty or the hospital guilty. But if you have a bunch of nursing students running around, that's like evidence. I mean, they may not be videotaping, but when there's a subpoena to testify, they're not going to commit a perjury, right? I mean, it's not like, so that's why hospitals don't want nursing students around. I mean, it makes a lot of sense from a legal perspective because even when there is not COVID-19, there are a lot of errors. But, hospitals okay because, nobody's going to do anything, right? Just they may talk about things with their nursing professors, but it ends there. Nobody's going to do anything because, nursing schools need hospitals. Hospitals need nursing students to come because they need future employees who are nurses. So there's a mutual unspoken agreement that you don't talk about the mistakes, right? It's like you see it, you discuss it in your nursing classroom back at Georgetown, but hey, don't tell us about it, right? You talk it in your classroom, just leave it there, And so that's how I think all the nursing schools operate, because there's a mutual benefit that keeps them from doing anything. But the problem is when it goes to the courts, then there's a problem because you have to swear oath to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. So what the students see during COVID-19, they will tell the courts, and that could put a nurse in jail, doctor in jail. That could put a hospital into liability for like $100 million in lawsuit. Why do you think they don't let any visitors come to the hospital during COVID-19? Obviously, nurses are there with their full PPE. So visitors can come with full PPE, enter the room as well if they want. They'll be protected. But no visitors are allowed to come. Why do you think that is? Obviously, there's this idea that, yes, a visitor cannot be fully protected, but they don't even let visitors in who are nurses, right? A reason for that is because if the visitor comes and sees what's going on, they could have legal problems, right? Because there's probably a lot of violations going on. And so nurses may say things, while they're tired and after 12-hour shift that could make the hospital liable, right? So So during crisis, one of the reasons why visitors are not allowed is because they don't want any liability because everything's crazy, right? Because a visitor could come and overhear nurses say things among themselves, and they can report that to OSHA, right? And then you'll be liable, right? And that could happen with nursing students too, right? Let's say nursing students come to your hospital and they see like code violations of safety, they could call OSHA and be whistleblower, and OSHA may come and investigate and say, well, yes, there's COVID, but that doesn't justify these safety violations. And then your hospital can be shut down. Or, or you have to pay like millions of dollars in fines. And then you have this X mark next to your name for the rest of your life. I mean, your future is dead as a nursing professional or nurse manager. You know what I mean? These things happen. I mean, the problem is this: when there's a crisis, a lot of mistakes can be made. During times of peace, mistakes are not made. I mean, it's easier to avoid mistakes. And the problem is with a lot of these regulations that protect human life, which I agree with, obviously. But the problem is for the first responders, whether they're police officers, nurses, doctors, firemen, for the first responders, this is a very difficult situation. This is a very high stressful situation. You may be burned out. So you may be doing things irrationally because you're burned out, right? You're burned out and you're not thinking clearly, right? So what you need is actually like some time off or some counseling. But because things are happening and there's like shortage of police or shortage of nurses, they're still putting you out in the street, even though you probably need some time off. And then, a lot of things happen that shouldn't happen, not because the police officer or nurse are evil, but because they're like tired after like 3 consecutive 12-hour shifts. It's highly stressful. Maybe their sister died of COVID, so they're like all anxious. And they may make mistakes that they would not under normal circumstances, right? You've been angry before, right? You probably have said or done things that you never thought you could do, just because you're like overly stressed. And so, one of the things that American Academy of Colleges of Nursing emphasizes is nurses have to take care of themselves. Because if nurses don't take care of themselves, then they're going to make mistakes when they take care of the patients. And so it's like that with police officers, firemen, EMT as well. Because everybody's under stress right now in COVID-19, but unlike normal people who are at home with the stay-at-home order, police officer, nurses, firemen, EMT, they're working. And many of them are getting COVID. They're stressed out. They're more stressed because, there are more problems that they have to handle in COVID-19 crisis. And there's shortage of people, like there's shortage of nurses in every hospital. There's shortage of police officers in every neighborhood. So they may do things that they would not normally do. But people are not going to be sensitive to it. They're not going to be like, oh, there was shortage of nurses. Oh, there was shortage of doctors. Oh, there was shortage of police officers. So if they make a mistake, we're going to forgive them. People are not forgiving, And one of the reasons why people are not forgiving is because they are burning out. They're stressed out. They're suffering from anxiety, right? From COVID-19. And if they have kids at home, they're suffering from anxiety with their kids. Maybe they're fighting with their kids. Maybe husband and wife are fighting. So whereas they would be more generous to like nurses or police officers making mistakes, they're not generous anymore. And they're just gonna fire you, or they're gonna put you in prison. They're gonna try to like put you in an electric chair when that's excessive punishment. It's not, in U.S. Constitution, one of the things that they emphasize is punishment it has to meet the crime. You can't make punishment excessive. But even mayors are just going crazy because they're stressed out and anxious and they're not taking care of themselves. Maybe they should go to prayer. Maybe they should sing some hymns, meditate on the Bible, calm themselves down. But all these mayors are like yelling and screaming across, like they're treating police officers like criminals, And part of that is because they're not taking care of themselves. They're emotionally unstable because of anxiety and stress. And serious problems that churches are closed down. So they don't have anywhere to go to deal with their spiritual distress and emotional lability. You know, like their labile emotionally, like emotions going up and down, up and down, up and down. And if churches were open, they could go and sit down in church, pray, talk to the priest or the pastor, you know, study the Bible and kind of calm themselves down. But the kind of social structures to help them control their anger, grief, anxiety, emotional or physical pain, that's not there because churches are closed down. So they don't know how to handle their problems. And so you have a whole country full of people. You know, if churches were open, yes, COVID might spread, but their spiritual needs will be taken care of. So, you know, you will not have as many people who are emotionally unstable, right? Because people like to go to church and it's free. It's not like a psychologist where you have to pay $150 an hour or 30 minutes. Church is free. You just go there and worship. And that's what keeps people going. Like people work hard, they have fights at work, they have coworkers stabbing them on the back. But on Sunday they're at church and they get rejuvenated from the sermon, from the singing, from praying and meeting other Christians, so that they could go back for another week, you know. And many people are just barely hanging on, and church is the only thing that's keeping them sane. So when all these Democratic governors close down churches, you're gonna have a lot of people losing their sanity, right? Literally. And so that's why I think in a given crisis, whatever the crisis, you have to keep the churches open. I mean, just make sure there are strict regulations, like you have to wear a mask or whatever. But you cannot close down churches because you have to deal with mental health. And poor people cannot pay for psychological services. They're too expensive. Church is always free. And that's why you gotta keep the churches open, because for the working class, for lower middle class, even middle class who can't afford $150 an hour, they need to go somewhere they could manage their emotional distress and anxiety, right? And these Democratic governors close down churches. So part of why we had so much violence is not that people were supporting George Floyd. Some of them were. They were just letting out steam. There are people who are just like letting out steam and burning stuff just because there's no outlet, right? They could go to church and like kind of calm themselves down. Churches are closed because these Democratic governors closed them down. You see what I'm saying? So yes, if you open up churches, maybe COVID-19 will spread. But look at what happened with George Floyd protest. I mean, that's probably more destructive than anything COVID-19 did in the last 3 months. What George Floyd protest did and what it became with Antifa and, you know, autonomous zones and defund police, burning police cars and looting, that I would argue is worse than anything COVID-19 did in the last 3 months. Do you agree with me? Yes, 110,000 people died, but people die. I mean, you know, these people might have died from like heart attack or stroke or whatever if there weren't COVID, right? I mean, maybe not all 110,000, but I mean, you know, these deaths are kind of individual problems. But this George Floyd protest initially started out good, but it became a monster. And it's still a monster now. You have all these mayors who are just like racist against white police officers, and they talk on TV like bashing white police officers as if they're like righteous God or something, you know? And it's sick. I see like Mayor Bottom from Atlanta. She disgusts me because the way she hates white police officer, that kind of discrimination against white people just sickens me. That's what makes, I mean, that, you know, it's just disgusting, you know? Discrimination is evil, whether Black people are doing it to white people or white people are doing it to Black people. And because Mayor Bottom of Atlanta, Georgia, she's a mayor and she's in a position of power, there's a power dynamics, right? She may be Black, she may be a Black and a woman, but she's the mayor of the city. So she has the ultimate power in the city. So there's a power disparity between Black woman mayor who has absolute power and a white police officer who has no power, relatively. Or there's a power power disparity. So what Mayor Bottom is doing is she's abusing her power, and she's using the power of the institution to crush the little guy. And that's evil. I call Mayor Bottom Jezebel because being black doesn't excuse you to use the institution and your power disparity against the little guy. You know, that's wrong. That's what institutional discrimination is. What Mayor Bottom is doing in Atlanta, Georgia, that is institutional discrimination. It's absolutely wrong ethically, absolutely wrong morally. And I'm going to teach you because some of you might not know the concept of power disparity. Some of you may not know the concept of equity. Some of you may not understand what institutional discrimination is. So I'm going to teach you, you know, because you need to know, right? Whether a black person in power or white person in power or Asian person in power practices abuse of power or manipulates power disparity against the little person, whether the little person is black, white, Hispanic, or Asian, we must oppose that because that is discrimination. That is institutional discrimination when a person in power does that. We must oppose that. That's why the reason I opposed police putting the knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes is because he's using his power as a police officer against someone who doesn't have power. There's a power disparity. And that's not right, right? So apart from the fact that it's a crime that he committed, his use of a power disparity is wrong. It's not about black or white issue. See, I have a problem with black people making this a black issue. It's not about black or white issue. If it was a black police officer who had his knee on a white criminal's neck, that's still wrong. I mean, it doesn't make it right, whatever the color. Do you understand what I'm saying? So when Atlanta Mayor Bottoms abuses her power to fire a police officer who was just doing his job, doesn't make it right just because she's black. It doesn't make it right just because she's a woman, right? I'm a reasonable person, and I'm sure you're a reasonable person as well. In America, we say everybody's innocent until proven guilty. We're not an African dictatorship, and Mayor Bottom is trying to make us into an African dictatorship. And this kind of lynching mentality that Mayor Bottom has in treating her white police officer, she's making America into an African dictatorship. And the reason I use the term African dictatorship is literally there are African dictatorships that does this, like Mugabe. Mugabe, you've heard of African dictator Mugabe. That's what he does. He uses his position to fire people anytime he wants. And he thinks that it's okay. And we Americans have to say, it's not okay, Mayor Bottom, that you're abusing your power and you're abusing the institutional structure to bypass due process, which is guaranteed under the US Constitution, right? All she had to do is put him on an administrative leave or suspension with pay, follow the protocol, put the guy in suspension with pay, and let the police agency that exists to investigate misconduct investigate it. And then they should have an independent adjudicators studying the case and then determine whether he violated the protocol or not. And if they say he did not violate protocol, the Mayor Bottoms must respect that. She can appeal the decision in the court of law, right? But you cannot just like fast track your attorney general, which is a political appointment, and practice dirty politics and try to put the police officer in jail. This is evil because this is injustice. There's no justice, there is no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Yes, think about this. You know, just because police officers, you know, are there have been some bad police officers. It doesn't make all white police officers bad. You know how some people are like, you know, I have a white female friend who said, I had a black ex-boyfriend and he just like dumped me and cheated on me with like other women. And so I hate all black men. I'm not gonna date all black men. I met white women who are like that, like my friends who have bad experiences. I'm like, it's not just because he's black. There are white guys who do that too, you know? There are Korean guys who do that too, you know? But because she had a lot of pain from her own experience, and her personal experience was that she dated this black guy who cheated on her. From her vantage point, all black men are like that. So she just person doesn't want to date any black men. So yes, there are several issues here, right? Her ex-boyfriend hurt her feelings, and I don't want to. I have to respect her feelings, and her pain and her experience, right? So I don't want to downgrade her pain or her experience. So I want to understand her. I want to empathize with her. But on the other hand, the fact that she's thinking that all black men are like that, that's not right either. But I mean, there's time for everything. I mean, you don't take a friend who's crying and try to lecture that person, right? Because that's not being a friend. There's time for everything, right? So when she's hurt and she's griping, she may say racist things about black people because her ex-boyfriend was black and she's white. And she may say a lot of things that's not right, but I'm comforting her, right? And I can't be like, hey, don't be racist. I mean, you know what I'm saying? There's a time for everything. You can't make race the most important issue in every setting, right? Because she's suffering pain. She had her boyfriend cheat on her and lie on her, so she's going through emotional pain. You have to meet her need as a friend, right? As a friend, I need to ensure that she's okay. I'm not there to judge her or lecture her at that point. So she may say racist things that I don't agree with, and I may feel like she's being unreasonable, but she's in her pain stage, right? She's in the anger stage of grief. So there are things that you have to do at that anger stage that you would not normally do, right? And the problem I have with this, the lot of what's going on in America now, is black people on TV who are speaking just about black issues and race. And as important as fair treatment of black people is, there are other issues as well. This world is not just filled with black people. There are Latinos who are suffering. There are Asian immigrants who are suffering. There are white poor people who are suffering. Most of the police officers come from lower class, working class. They come from very poor families. And, I've seen black people on TV, on CNN, come up and say these police officers have only high school degrees and they're like looking down on them. And that's uncalled for. I have to speak out because, justice is not just black justice. Do you see what I'm saying? If we're going to create an American society that is good, it has to be good for everybody. It can't just be good for black people. And the problem I have right now with what's going on in the Senate and the US House of Representatives and in CNN and in the national discourse is that people are making this about blacks, about racism. You cannot simplify everything like that. One of the important issues right now in healthcare disparity discussion, and as you know, I learned from Professor Lorraine Spencer, who's an amazing professor of public health nursing. She was a nurse at Wakefield High School in Arlington, and I taught English as second language students at Wakefield during summer, because I teach normally in District of Columbia public schools during school year. And one of the things that Professor Lorraine Spencer emphasized is that health disparities are like zip code oriented. And that's the current evidence-based research on public health and public health nursing is that we can't just simplify health disparities on the racial lines. Like, for example, in Arlington County, my zip code 22204 is considered an area with health disparity. Majority of the people who live in 22204, I live here obviously, are Hispanic, like a lot of people from Guatemala, Colombia, Bolivia, and there are like Ethiopians, Eritreans. There are some people from Arabic countries. There are some Asians. And so the problem of health disparity is not just about Black people. We have some Black people here in 22204, and some of them are suffering. But in Arlington County, 22204, my zip code, is considered the area with greatest health disparity. So actually, as part of my health, public health nursing class for Professor Lorraine Spencer, my group that was comprised of some great people. I really like my clinical group on public health nursing in Arlington County. Emily and Senya, and me, we were like the immediate micro group. And in terms of like the whole group, we had whole group, and then it was divided into two like small groups. So Emily and Senya and I, we were like small group. I love you guys. We had a great project on Arlington. And then the other three were Claire, Lena, and my best buddy in nursing school from China, Ying Fu. She's like Ying Fu McMillan now, but yeah, she's married. But Ying Fu is like her original name. Yeah, so I love you guys too. So I mean, it's a great group. But what we did is we researched this area, 22204. We worked with Arlington County Public Health Department, and we focused on 22204 specifically, and we did the windshield survey. It's a part of a assessment strategy or tool or instrument to understand the area, 22204. So the zip code in this area is where health disparity is, meaning people in this zip code are not having as good of an access to healthcare as other zip codes in Arlington County. Obviously, there are individuals in 22204 who have very good access to healthcare, but I'm just saying as a zip code. So right now, Professor Williams at Harvard's, School of Public Policy, you see him sometimes on TV. He came and lectured at Georgetown University. And I go to generally every single health disparity lecture at Georgetown because that's one of the things that I really care about, making sure that health disparities are reduced. And one of the things that he emphasized as well is that we need to see health disparity not along racial lines, but along zip code lines. Because there are white Americans who can be poor. There can be Hispanic Americans who can be poor. There can be Black Americans who can be poor. There can be Asian Americans who can be poor, right? And what unites them is that they live in the same zip code area. And that is a way to understand their economic status, and also perhaps understand health disparities that people of different races in that zip code experience. And that makes a lot of sense, So in current research on health disparities, the emphasis is not on race. We've kind of moved away from that. Because there are now Black Americans who are like, you know, like multi-billionaires, like CEO of American Express is African American, and he's multi-millionaire, if not a billionaire. So, um, it's you can't just talk about things in terms of color, and so when I see some people on TV, speaking about Black race as if it's like homogenous, like all Black people are the same. I don't think that's fair to the Black community as well, because there's diversity in the Black community. There are Black Americans, there are African Americans who trace their lineage all the way back to slave days, but there are Black Americans who are recent immigrants, like they immigrated themselves. Or immigrants who were born in America, but their parents immigrated. A lot of Eritreans, a lot of Ethiopians in Arlington's 22204 zip code. They're recent immigrants, and so I meet some of them and I talk to them about their experiences. And so like when I see like Mayor Bottoms kind of treating a white police officer like that, like as if it's trash or a slave, it upsets me. Because I don't think that's the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King. I don't think Dr. Martin Luther King wanted Black people in America to weaponize race against poor white people, or weaponize race to abuse power disparity dynamics like mayor and police officer. She's like, who holds all the power? Police officer holds no power against the mayor. And I think I would argue that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., if he were alive today, he would agree with me and condemn Mayor Keisha Bottoms of Atlanta for abusing her power. I don't think Dr. Martin Luther King would agree with what she's doing. She's blinded by her hatred of white people. And I think the proof is in the pudding. I think I have the right to say that because of the way she treated the police officer. That's the evidence. Obviously, it's possible that she was just under a lot of stress and she was just kind of making mistake after mistake. But then the white police officer who had his knee on George Floyd's neck can argue the same way, right? At the end of the day, abuse of power at an official level is an abuse of power. And it's wrong. Whether it's the police officer who did it to George Floyd, or Mayor Keisha Bottoms who did it to the white police officer who was just following protocol, which is wrong. And I believe that every good American, whether you're Black, Asian, or Hispanic, or white, need to be brave and stand up against such abuses of power and institutional discrimination. I don't think I'm being unreasonable here, because we all saw the video. We all saw him steal the taser from the police officer. Whenever you steal any weapon from the police officer, you have the right to shoot the criminal. I mean, because I don't think any court of law would find the police officer guilty. Now, when a criminal steals a gun or a taser from the police officer and then seeks to use it against him, I don't think any court of law will find the police officer guilty. I assure you, if I'm in the jury, I will not rest. I will never change innocent, not guilty verdict, because I saw the video. He didn't commit a crime. The African-American criminal stole his standard issue police weapon. Yeah, at that point, police officers had a duty to either arrest him or kill him. I mean, I would say that's an ethical value, ethical requirement of all police officers who are not in dereliction of duty. Like, I have Billy, who's an officer in the U.S. Navy. What do you think he would do if, if he's in the war zone, and let's say we have an ally who's like Germany, and some German soldier took his pistol, you know, from him, what do you think he would do? You're not supposed to take anybody's weapon, right? He has no way of knowing what the intention of that German soldier is who's stealing his pistol, even if he is in an army that is an allied army of ours, let's say in a time of struggle. You know, I should think that he would be duty bound to retrieve his weapon by any means necessary, including shooting him in dead, right? In time of conflict, you don't take other people's weapon. I mean, you know, once you do that, that's like asking the other person to shoot you. And so I think that's true in military code of justice. Same with police code. I don't think you know, anybody would disagree with that. Any police officer in the United States. I don't think any lawyer would disagree with that. I don't think any court will find him guilty just because his police issued taser was taken by the criminal. And we know he's a criminal because wasn't he intoxicated, and he was they called the police for a reason, right? Wasn't he like a threat to the people at Wendy's or something? Isn't that why they called the police? You know, he was obviously, you know, being intoxicated in public is a crime as well, right? I think in all 50 states, if you're intoxicated to the extent where you can't, you know, rationally discuss issues with the police officer, I think that's a crime. I mean, like in every city, a public intoxication is a crime. So, so definitely, you know, he's a criminal by legal definition of the term. I'm not trying to be unfair to him. And so, you know, I would argue that the current way things are going, it's not about justice and fairness. It's about trying to express anger unreasonably, right? And that's not what Martin Luther King would have wanted. Because, you know, we read what he wrote about, and we hear what he preached about. And I don't think he would support taking life, you know, like a job away from a police officer who's just doing his job, right? It's excessive force. It goes against the U.S. Constitution. It's just wrong. And so, yeah, I mean, I think every American, 330 million American, must stand for fairness and justice. Because as I said, and as Dr. Williams at Harvard has said, yeah, and he's African American, and that's his specialty, you know, health disparity, racial inequity, you know, social inequity. You know, that police officer is not wealthy. Most police officers, I would say probably over 80% of the police officers come from like lower middle class or working class families. And when I say like Black Americans, you know, who have like college degrees come and just like make fun of police officers who have high school diploma. I mean, I look at that and I said, you know, as you know, I'm a leader in American Federation of Teachers, AFT, which is a union. So I'm a union member. You know, I've been a lifelong Republican. I'm running as an independent for U.S. Congress right now, but people voted for me in Local 6 in Washington, D.C., AFT chapter. All of them are Democrats. But I feel like protecting the rights of workers is not a party issue, because a country can only be strong if we have working class who can eat and who has a job, you know. And so I fight for the power of the unions to be able to take care of workers who are mistreated by, you know, people in power like Mayor Keisha Bottoms. That's a perfect example of why we need unions, right? Like the people who think that they could do whatever they want to working class just because they can, right? And that's just abuse of power. And that's why we have unions in America. And just because, you know, a few police officers did something wrong does not mean we should take power away from police unions. I think that's absolutely wrong. And I think it's going to be more detrimental to African Americans in America because a lot of African Americans are protected by unions. And police unions like American Federation of Teachers or United Auto Workers or AFL-CIO, all of their power will be weakened if you try to weaken the power of the police unions. Because issues that police unions deal with are the same issues that United Auto Workers deal with, are the same issues American Federation of Teachers deals with, same issues that AFL-CIO deal with, same issues Truckers of America deal with, nursing unions deal with. These are same exact issues. People in power just thinking like they could fire you at will, right? Without the unions, the working class would be helpless. And so a lot of these African Americans who call themselves Democrats or, you know, pro-working class, they are right now in the process of destroying unions, which will result in weakness. Like over 10 million American workers who are Black becoming weak in their jobs. Like there are Black leaders I saw on CNN criticizing police unions and saying, like if a police officer is fired for here, they could go to another place and get a job. Maybe he was fired unjustly. Why do you assume that a police officer is fired righteously? Like Keisha Bottom firing that police officer, I think is absolutely unjust. I call it evil. It's abuse of power. It's the kind of thing like some employers do with Black workers. And the only thing that protects them are unions. If they didn't have unions, they'll lose their job. They will never be able to get a job again. So when I see like Black intellectuals on TV, they want to prove themselves correct so much. It's like somebody, you know, just wants to win an argument, that they're not thinking about the ramifications of what they are saying, right? If you're going to take away power from police unions, you're going to end up taking power away from United Auto Workers, from AFL-CIO, AFT, you know, and I've played leadership role in American Federation of Teachers, Local 6. Why would you want to do that? But you see, when you're so blinded by hatred, like as Keisha Bottoms or a lot of the Black intellectuals on TV, they're not seeing clearly, and certainly they're not thinking about the ramification, the domino effect, or historical impact that this would have. So in the long run, African Americans will suffer far more as individuals in the job place because of weakened unions. So why would you want to weaken police unions? If you weaken police unions, you would necessarily weaken all unions. 100% of the unions will be weakened in America. Because they're all unions. They're like one class of entity. By law, if you can disarm police unions, you can disarm AFT, you could disarm AFL-CIO, you could disarm United Auto Workers. America's workers will be totally powerless. And so from that vantage point of me supporting America's workers, as you know, I'm an independent candidate for US Congress. I support unions. I'm not like some of these Republicans who are billionaires who want to destroy unions. I absolutely disagree with that. I think unions are important. So maybe it's good that I'm running as an independent because I support unions. I support helping working class. And I think President Trump sees like I do, like, you know, I think he respects unions. You know, maybe it's because of his Scottish background, because country of Scotland, you know, has always been like dominated by England. And there's this kind of concept, you know, we need to protect the little guys, like the working class, because, you know, most of Scotland is working class, right? I don't know, maybe President Trump has noble roots, but he may have working class roots in Scotland. I don't know what his roots are. in Scotland, but yeah, and I think he's also from Germany, right? German side. Unless his German side is noble or royal, it's probably working class. There's like one similarity between Germany and Scotland is it's a country filled with a lot of working class people, and so Germans and Scottish people tend to be very pro working class, and that comes through, even among wealthy people who have Scottish roots or German roots, and that's not true with English people. Like English people who are immigrants, many of them have this kind of nobility experience, kind of looking down on the Irish people and the Scottish people and the Welsh people. So they have a different way of looking at things. And they generally are people in the Episcopalian church. But, like Trump is Presbyterian Church of Scotland. And so I think President Trump cares about justice for police officers too. And I appreciate that, because I think if we had like Hillary Clinton, who's of English descent, I think she was a Methodist. The Methodists tend to be a little bit, they tend to be a little bit elite as well, Methodists and the Episcopalians. Hillary would have tried probably destroy the police. I could see like Methodists and Episcopalians try to destroy the police because they have no respect for the working class. Because in American history, a lot of police officers were Irish Catholics. That's a stereotype, but like working class people. And a lot of English immigrants look down on the police, look down on like Irish Catholic immigrants. And that exists. You can read about it in the history books. And so, yeah, I'm so like when Black people on TV are trying to destroy police unions, I say, these wealthy Black people who have college degrees, they are trying to empower their wealth class, and destroy the working class whites. And they're going to end up destroying Black working class as well. It's just what they're doing is classicist. So do you see, I disagree with what Keisha Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, who's obviously not working class woman. She's, I guess she's like belongs to the Black wealth class. And a lot of the intellectuals on TV are like Black wealth class, right? They have millions in their bank accounts. They're not like your street activists, that they're representing the working class, And so you have these Black wealth class people coming on, who live in like their $1 million homes. And then they're just like bashing police unions, bashing white police officers who are working class Americans. I find it absolutely sick and disgusting. It's one thing to talk about justice for, George Floyd, which I also support. But it's another thing to like treat all white police officers like trash or slaves. That's just absolutely wrong. Because, police officers risk their lives for like meager pay. Majority of the police officers don't even meet their middle-class salary level. In America, to be considered like in the middle class, you have to have a household income of about $150,000 a year. How many police officers will meet that? They won't. I mean, if it's police officer working and their wife working, they probably won't hit that. A lot of them. And so they're not even like considered middle working class people in terms of wages. And many of them are living in, zip codes like mine, 22204 in Arlington. And, they're just making an honest living, risking their lives. And the way like these Black activists are trying to make them into like evil people, I think it's just sick and disgusting, because these are like Black rich people on TV, using their power and wealth to just like criticize white working class police officers. It's just absolutely wrong. This is about class and about wealth class. And you're watching on TV unfolding power dynamics, power discrepancies, wealth discrepancies with a lot of these wealthy Black intellectuals or wealthy Black activists or businessmen, just kind of bashing police officers who are working class white Americans. And I think, these wealthy Black people on TV, it's not about race anymore. They're on a power trip, and just hear them talk on TV. They talk irrationally, right? Obviously, they don't have an interest in making America into a better community for all races. Because all they talk about is Black people. 13% of America is Black. And Black people are not the only people who suffered in America. You know how much Irish Catholics suffered in America when they immigrated during potato famines, 1880s? They worked and they built their Catholic churches, Catholic school systems. I told you about my best friend from UCLA, Michael Lovano, whose mother and father immigrated from Sicily when they were teenagers, right? Michael Lovano, who's a professor at St. Norbert College, and he's been a chairman of Department of History at St. Norbert. His mother is from Sicily. She just have a high school degree, and she's worked as a cashier at like I guess it's like ShopRite or some Stop and Shop or Giant, one of those. She worked as a cashier for all her life. All her life, since like 18 when she started working. All her life. She worked like 40 years or so. And you know what she was getting paid? When it kind of brings tears to my eyes because 40 years of working as cashiers, and I think she started as a minimum wage of like what, $3.50 or something. And the time that I was talking to Michael Lovano when we're both doing PhD at UCLA, she was getting paid like $11 or something, 11 or $11.50. Can you imagine that, working 40 years in a hard working class job, and and you're getting only $11.50 an hour, or it might have been lower than that. And you know what she does? Let me tell you, like Michael Lovano had to take 3 buses from Sierra Madre to UCLA. Takes him 2 hours to get there. This was before they had the trains, the subway. Because they don't have a car. Michael Lovano was doing his PhD at UCLA. He was like 25, 26. And he didn't have a car. Because his mother's working as a cashier, making like what, $11 an hour. You know what they eat at home? Because sometimes I drive Michael home, because he has to take 2 hours bus again when he goes home from UCLA. So I drive Michael home, and he does this like every day. 2 hours bus ride here, 2 hour bus ride, 4 hours on the bus. 3 buses. He has to take 3 buses to get here, 3 buses back. And I drive him to his home, and you know what Michael tells me? He says, you know how things expire. Food expires. So when foods expire, the day that they expire, or the day before the day that they expire, they sell the food to people who work as cashiers or at I guess it was like a ShopRite or something like that, for like 25% of the list price. So the owner is still trying to make money, but it's still like 25%. So you save money, right? So Michael Lovano's mother would buy things like on the day of expiration for 25% of the market price. bring the stuff home and then use that to make food. That's how they live all throughout Michael Luvano's life. And they live that frugally, right? And Michael Luvano's mother, Mrs. Luvano, she lives frugally like that, but she put all her boys through Jesuit schools from pre-kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. Every single one of her boys. Because she said, I want my kids to be good Catholics. You know, she's from Sicily. She said, I want my children to be good Catholics, learn the catechism, learn to respect the church. So she's paying tuition every year for all her boys to go to Jesuit Catholic schools. And that's where all her money is going. They don't even take a vacation. They do not take a vacation. All the years I was doing PhD at UCLA, I've never seen Michael Luvano's family take a vacation. She's working as a cashier. I think she gets what, 10 days? Not even 10 days, 7 to 10 days. And she uses those holidays for Catholic holidays like Christmas, Easter, you know, like there are all these holidays and church activities. She's very actively involved in her church. So like she uses those holidays to get involved in her church activities. There are white Americans who are like that. And when I see like Black activists on TV who are in Black wealth class, talking as if like white Americans do not suffer, that they don't suffer discrimination in the workplace, that they do not suffer poverty, or they do not suffer not having things, it angers me because they're not looking at it from the vantage point of all Americans. They're just selfish. They're looking at it from their own vantage point. How many Black activists do you think who were born into middle American Black families with mom and dad who have college degrees, living in Alexandria or Arlington, not my zip code, but wealthy zip codes, in houses that cost like $1 million? How many of them do you think suffered? Really? Really? I mean, let's be honest here. They may be Black. They may have some people like look at them when they are like in a grocery store or whatever. I don't know. And maybe they do. I mean, I will give you that. You know, but if they're wearing designer clothes that look expensive, I'm sure people are not going to be staring at them in a department store. Or if they're driving in a Mercedes Benz, you know, police cars not going to stop a Mercedes Benz in Arlington or Alexandria, you know, with a Black man inside who's wearing like a nice suit. You know, and so it's like, you know, I'm not saying that Black people in Alexandria and Arlington do not suffer, but I'm saying that there are whites all over America, many of them who live on the poverty line, not because they're dishonest, not because they're like, you know, evil, but because maybe they're immigrants from Sicily or from Ireland, you know, or from Germany, working class immigrants from Europe, who are just, you know, trying to live the American dream. And some of their children graduate from a Jesuit high school or public high school and join the police department. It's for them, it's a big achievement. And of course it is. Being a police officer, you do a lot of good. And they're proud of that. And then, you know, you have these wealthy Black Americans coming on CNN, you know, and like just talking as if like they've suffered. I doubt many of the activists on TV who are African American suffered half as much as Michael Luvano's mother. Seriously, for God's sake. I mean, how many of you do not have a car? You know, I'm talking about the activists who speak on TV and had to take 3 buses to go to your college or graduate program. Michael Luvano, one of the brightest students at UCLA's history department, I was the brightest, he was second brightest. The both of us were kind of bright. And there were 100 of us who came into PhD program in the same year. And we were like among the top of the crop and the 100. But he didn't have a car. He never had a car. He had to take public transportation. And so, like I'm disgusted by a lot of the Black activists who come on TV and act like they're the only ones who suffer. It's just not right. It's not like you were slaves. I mean, geez, seriously, you're not slaves. There's been emancipation since what? 1860s. You were not a slave. A lot of these Black activists, their parents were college graduates. They have never seen suffering in their life. And they act like they've suffered. And it's just, I call that fraud. I think it's fraud for some of these Black activists who like come from Black middle class families and talk about like suffering of Black people as if it's like the only suffering in the world. I'm not saying you're not suffering, but when you talk like only your suffering matters and suffering of like white poor people don't matter, that's when I have a problem, right? Yeah, I don't want to negate your suffering, but let's not negate the suffering of white poor people, white working class Americans, and a lot of the police officers are working class Americans who make peanuts. Like a lot of police officers make like $29,000. I think NYPD, when you start out, I think as a rookie you get paid about $29,000 or somewhere around there. I read somewhere. And and they're risking their life. I mean, it's like New York City is crime infested with criminals. I mean, that's like death sentence to be a police officer there for $29,000. I mean, you can't do anything with $29,000 in New York. And and Governor Andrew Cuomo said he's going to give a raise. He never did. What a liar! And I mean, I'm sure you wanted to give a raise, but you're constrained. But you did say, Governor Cuomo, you did say you were going to give a raise to police officers. You did not, though. So you lied. No, I mean, well, it became a lie. I mean, I'm sure you had a good intention, but yeah. But the point is this, let's not be like that. That's not going to create a better American society. Do you want a better American society, or do you want to just like spew hatred and anger on CNN and create a worse society? I mean, I don't understand what these Black leaders are trying to do. Not because I don't understand, I understand because I'm an expert of ethnic studies and I'm an expert of African American studies. I told you I was trained by Vincent Wimbush, one of the leading African American experts in America. He was the president of American Academy of Religion, AAR, who teaches at Claremont University. And I was trained by him on, and I wrote an article on Toni Morrison that got published. And I presented the paper at the National Conference of American Academy of Religion in African American Studies section, where like all these experts on African Americans came and we discussed. Most of them were African Americans. And so, so I understand where they're coming from, obviously. But I'm just saying that they need to consider all aspects of our nation, right? And we need to work through this in a constructive way. And Keisha Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, she's not being constructive. A lot of the Black intellectuals who are coming on CNN, the way they talk is not constructive to creating a better America. And that's where I have a problem. As you know, I'm running as an independent candidate for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District, Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax County, and Falls Church. So vote for me on November 3rd, 2020. Right now, like these liberal Democrats, Tom Beyer, who's the current congressman in Virginia's 8th District, and Virginia Democratic Governor Ralph Northam, they're trying to block me out of the Virginia ballot box. I'm an official candidate for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District, registered with Federal Election Commission, and also with U.S. Congress, Office of the Clerk. So I'm an official candidate, but I have to be on the ballot in Virginia, and they require 1,000 signatures by June 9th. And Governor Northam shut the state down from March 30th to June 10th, the day after I was supposed to submit 1,000 signatures. So I couldn't go door to door to collect signatures. So I wrote a letter requesting a waiver to Virginia Board of Elections each of the 50 states have their own board of elections that are governed by state law of that state. And the Commissioner Piper wrote back and said he doesn't have the legal authority to do that. So I wrote to Governor Northam to give me a waiver. He did not. So I filed a lawsuit on June 3rd, 6 days before the deadline, to have the court give me for the court to order Governor Northam to give me a waiver. You can follow this court case on Arlington Circuit Court website. So just type in Arlington Circuit Court on Google, and then they have an electronic system where you could type in or search for cases. Just type in my name, Kim, my last name, comma, Heerak Christian, and then the case will come up. Just click on that. It's in the civil section, and then you can follow along. Right now, Virginia sheriffs are in the process of serving Governor Ralph Northam and Virginia Board of Election. I filed on June 3rd, and I filed with Virginia Sheriff to serve the subpoenas on June 3rd. So everything is legit. This is going to court, and I'm happy to take it all the way to Supreme Court if I need to. So I'm definitely in the race till November 3rd. Obviously, I'm waiting for court to order Governor Northam to give me a waiver so I could be on the ballot by November 3rd. So, we have plenty of time. I'm sure, we'll have our case will be like next month or whatever. So anyways, just follow along on Google. It's kind of exciting, right? You're enjoying it? Yeah. So look at today's cycle of life in the age of COVID-19. Right? So you have little baby, and then there's graduation like me. And then, you have death. I like this, I'm glad I ordered this, It's like an extra I could, I saw that last year among some of the graduates. I said, I have to order this. And it makes, your graduation gown look better because it's like kind of plain, just the graduation gown, but you have this thing on, it's like nice. So, yeah, so people who are graduating next year, there probably will not be a graduation ceremony next year either if there's no vaccine, but at least order it, as a memento. I'm sure all of my friends who are clinical nurse leaders are at home wearing their gown, looking at their gown, like me. Maybe some of you watching me now went to your closet and took it out and wore it. Because this is the only time you're going to wear it, really. I mean, this is the only place you're going to wear it. You're not going to wear it in a ceremony because there's not going to be a ceremony. So just take your gown out and be like me, wear it and watch this show. Yeah, I could see like Emily and Senya wearing their gown, and Claire, Pauletta, she's actually in Falls Church, just like a couple miles from here. If we didn't have COVID-19, we would like meet up for coffee or something, But 6 feet of distance, I think everything is still kind of closed. And I mean, you don't want to take a risk, We're graduating in August. So I mean, would you want to take a risk before graduation and get COVID and like become intubated? I mean, geez, because that could happen, I mean, to be honest with you, Claire, like, she looks very healthy. So I'm sure like everything will bounce off of her. She's like played soccer for Fordham University when she was doing her bachelor's. She just graduated from bachelor's, came here directly, and I think she's like the smartest person in our program. Either she or Ying Fu. One of them are like number one. They're probably like number one and number two in our program. I have 3.5, so it's respectable. It's an A- grade, 3.5 out of 4.0. So yeah, but I think they both have like 4.0 or 3.9. They're so smart, They're so smart, and so they're so, I like them so much, both of them, They're smart, they're like friendly, they have a nice heart, both of them. I don't know how they cook though, because every time we eat, we just eat out, but yeah, I wonder if they cook well. But they're like nearly perfect people. So Nathan is so lucky, he married Ying Fu. I mean, they met at University of California, San Diego. They got married like in their senior year. Yeah, they graduated, they got married, and they went to Hawaii for a honeymoon, and then drove out here from San Diego, across the country. And they look so cute together. They're like perfect couple. Yeah, but I would say Nathan is lucky because like Ying is amazing. Nathan, he's okay. I mean, I'm a guy, so he seems like a decent guy. He seems like a very nice guy. But like Ying, she's like awesome. So he's so lucky, he married the right woman. But whoever marries Claire will be like that too. She's like awesome. She's probably like one in a million. So yeah. But anyway, yeah. So and Emily's getting married in the fall. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Oh, it's too bad. I mean, like if there weren't COVID, she'd probably invite all of us. We could fly out and have a great like wedding ceremony. And where is she from? Like somewhere in California. Um, oh, it would have been so fun. It'd be like a reunion. It would have been like a 3-month reunion. But now I don't think she's even having. I don't know. Hopefully she has a wedding. But yeah, I mean, geez, that kind of sucks. I mean, you can't really have a normal wedding because of COVID. And like Christmas time, COVID, and I mean that's the second wave or second peak. So many people will be dying at that time, probably in California too. Oh, I feel so bad for her. Oh, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, so uh, at least one of us is getting married. Oh, I'm so happy for you, Emily. I am. I mean, and he's great. He's a good guy too. But yeah. So Ying is married from our clinical group from public health nursing. She's the only one married. Ying is the only one married. Claire is not married. Lena is not married. Senya is not married. I'm not married. Emily's not married, but she's engaged to be married. So wow, all of us are like practically all of us are single. But anyway, yeah. But yeah, so the cycle of life, and in the last 24 hours, as I said, yesterday was kind of God's gift to President Trump Day. But I mean, it's still fairly low, but it's around 1,000. We're a little bit below 1,000, but it's around 1,000. So there were 782 cases in the last 24 hours. So yesterday there was, 782. So total death was at 116,135. Yes. Yeah, it's like an emergency. And now the total death is at 116,917. Total cases are kind of going up at the same rate, between 20 to 30,000. So yesterday, the total case was 2,113,372. And 24 hours later, we have 2,136,208 cases. But you know why this police light is blinking? Because there's an emergency. Someone call 911 because there's an emergency. Oh, don't defund the police. We need our police. But yeah, the emergency that we have, and this is going to be a serious problem. I'm sorry to share with you that it's going to be a serious problem, but it's going to be a serious problem. Is that we have several states where we're having over 2,000 cases per day. So at the rate of 6%, if you have 1,000 cases in one day, 60 people will die. So you have 2,000 cases in one day, 120 people will die from the 2,000 cases that day. In 10 days, you're going to have 1,200 people die. In 30 days, you're going to have 3,600 people die at that rate, just in one state. And that's just one month, 30 days, month of June. So 10 states, it's going to be 36,000. Do you see how this works? It's a serious problem right now. The problem is they're increasing. So there's no guarantee that they're going to stay at the 2,000 level. It could go up to like 5,000 infections per day, especially because those states are all open now. It could even go to 10,000 infections per day. And it could happen relatively quickly because it's an exponential growth. So it's a serious problem because you may have 10,000 cases per day in some of these states. You know, Florida, for example, one of the states with over 2,000 cases per day. You have big cities, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando. You know, there are a lot of big cities. Any of these cities could become like New York. You saw how it was in New York, right? Texas is another state that's having more than 2,000 cases per day, and they're running out of beds in ICUs. Well, Florida and Texas, both of them. They may run out of ICU beds in a couple of weeks at this rate. We don't know. So Texas has a lot of cities that are big as well. Houston, Dallas, Austin's pretty big, Corpus Christi, you know, any of these cities can become like New York. And it can happen within a few weeks. You know how quickly New York became New York, right? Happened in a blink of an eye. Suddenly, it just shot up. That could happen in any of these cities. California has over 2,000 cases. Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego. Sorry, Yang, Nathan, sorry. But yeah, Nathan's family's in San Diego. This could happen. In Arizona, they have over 2,000 cases per day. They're big cities too, like Phoenix. It could become like New York. So it's possible that they could have like, each of these major cities can have hundreds die per day. We're seeing tremendous growth of COVID-19 in North Carolina, which is just south of Virginia, which means it'll probably spread through the southern border in Virginia. So Ralph, Governor Northam, expect a spike in Virginia in the next few weeks. From North Carolina, it's going to spread. As you know, I taught in Emporia, Virginia, which is like 1 hour from North Carolina border. A lot of the teachers who taught there actually drove every day from North Carolina. Yeah. So there's a lot of movement there in the South. So yeah, expect a sharp spike of COVID-19 cases in Virginia, southern part, which border on North Carolina. Because North Carolina, they have over 1,000 cases now, and they're running out of ICU beds and hospital beds. Alabama, it's further away, but they're in crisis, especially in Montgomery, Alabama, which is the capital. They're having a serious crisis now, running out of beds, ICUs. So right now, you know, as you know, I predicted that 1 million Americans would die by August. I stick to that statement. I'm not going to revise it just because, as I said, any of these states can have multiple cities with over several hundred people dying per day in each of these cities. The worst case scenario is we will hit like 10,000 deaths per day during summer, which I think is possible because in April we hit over 4,000 deaths per day. And that was primarily in New York City. I mean, yeah, New York City and kind of Michigan, you know, and part of Illinois, and part of New Jersey. Those are only 4 states. Look how many states there are on the screen right now. Florida, which is a big state like New York. Texas, which is a big state like New York. And then you have like California, which is that bigger than New York? And then you have Arizona, North Carolina, Alabama. I didn't put South Carolina there because they're a little bit under 1,000, but it's a smaller state. So I mean, South Carolina will probably surpass 1,000 by next week. Yeah, and then it's going to spread from there. Yeah, this is like this is a worst case scenario right now. That's what's happening right now. We are in the second peak. I don't call it a wave because, as I shared with you from the very beginning, this is a 365 days year virus, which means there is no such thing as a wave. It's just 365 days a year. Yes, North Carolina is just south of Virginia. They have over 1,000 cases per day. This can be Virginia's reality. So let's see what happens. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's actually very bad. Now, I'm going to give you the list of 5 top US states with COVID-19 cases, and look at that. All of them are over 5,000 deaths. Can you imagine? Each of the 50 states can have over 10,000 deaths by August. It's possible. Now, New York is number 1 with 384,575 cases. Death is at 30,909. And you can have another scenario where they go, it becomes like March again. You know, it can happen in New York. There's like 10 million people in the city. New Jersey is number 2 with 167,426 cases. Death is at 12,792. California is at 157,294 cases. Deaths are at 5,156. It's growing. Illinois is at 133,639 cases. Death is at 6,398. Massachusetts is number 5 at 105,885 cases. And their death is at 7,664. So except for California and Illinois, you see other states are above 6% of death. So some states may have 10% death, especially if you run out of beds. You could even have 50% of the cases dying. So let's see if that happens with any state in the summer. But it seems like we're going to have a very rough summer this summer. And I stick by my thesis theory that 1 million American citizens will die from COVID total by August. If you remember April, some of you may have short-term memory, have forgotten. We had several days where we had over 4,000 people die. Like in 3 days, we had 12,000 people die. Yeah, and that's just from like 2, 3, 4 states. Yeah. Now, identity crisis. I thought, I'll talk a little bit more about Jewish history because it seems like, a lot of you enjoyed the talk about Jewish history from yesterday. You learned a lot and you're kind of more interested in learning more. And I am a leading expert on Jewish history in the world. So who better than I to show you the way about Jewish history, right? So I thought I'll talk a little bit today about identity crisis. Because, one of the things that Jewish people go through is an identity crisis. Everybody goes through identity crisis, but you're talking about people who did not have a nation for 2,000 years. Right? So, like if I say, who are you? You say, I'm an American, right? You have an identity, and your identity, personal identity is linked to your national identity, right? When you're traveling around the world, they say, who are you? They say, I'm American, right? That's your identity. For most people, their identity is their national identity. Like I say, I'm Korean. There's a nation called Korea, right? So personal identity has been linked to national identity for the longest time, whether you're in Asia or Africa or United States. But Jews did not have a nation for 2,000 years. So their experience is completely different from the experience of others, like Koreans. And some argue that the fact that there is an AIPAC, like Israeli lobbying group in America that is really big is because a lot of Jews in America do not really feel like they're 100% American. I mean, I'm, you know, I don't feel like I'm 100% American because I'm Asian, right? I look different. Like when you think about Americans, you think about either white person or black person, right? Generally. Um, you know, and those of us who are not like that don't quite fit into the spectrum, right? You have to be either black or white. So Hispanic Americans, their number is bigger than black people, but the stigma is still there, you know, stereotype. And I look kind of Hispanic, but you know, so and then you know, Jewish Americans, you know, they don't feel like they fit in. How do we know? Because they keep talking about it, right? I mean, if you feel like you're 100% American, you talk about your Jewish identity so much. You know, you don't see like German Americans talk about their German identity all the time. You don't see French Americans talking about their French identity all the time. Like Michael Luvano, his mother immigrated from Sicily when she was a teenager. And Michael doesn't talk about his Sicilian identity that much, or his Italian identity. He just thinks of himself as an American. I mean, that's how most Americans are, right? They don't really talk about their country that much, or like their alternate identity. Like they just talk about themselves as an American. But Jewish Americans are not that way. And that kind of shows you that they're going through an identity crisis. Anytime you talk about anti-Semitism or Jewishness, you're giving yourself away as somebody who is insecure in his or her identity. I don't know if you know that. For those of you who are Jewish people watching this show, I have a lot of Jewish fans. You know, I told you I was really popular with Jewish women. I dated a lot of beautiful Jewish women in Israel. I was trying to convert them to marry, so I could marry them. You know, because I'm only going to marry a Christian. But yeah, but Jewish women like me wherever I go. I mean, yeah, they want to date me. Yeah, yeah. So I just, you know, that's just the way things are with me. You know, I'm like the alpha male wherever I go. So like, women generally want to date me, but like Jewish women really like me. I don't know why, but they do. Like everywhere I go. When I was at Brown University, I took this Jewish girl out, and she did her bachelor's at Stanford University, and she was doing her PhD at Brown. And I took her out and, you know, to dinner. And her family's Orthodox Jewish, and I guess she's Orthodox. I mean, I've dated a lot of Orthodox Jewish women. I don't know why they say yes to me because I'm like a Gentile, but they do. So you know, if they're pretty, I take them out. Yeah. Oh well. But anyway, yeah. So this beautiful girl at Brown University, whose like parents are like multi-millionaires, maybe they're like billionaires. But she went to Stanford, and yeah, I took her out, and then we chatted. But she didn't want to convert to Christianity either. Yeah, you know, it's just my luck with women is it's bad. You know, that's why I'm still single. Like, if one of these Jewish women I dated was beautiful and a billionaire, they converted to Christianity, I would have married them in a second. You know, they're all really nice. You know, the women I date are really nice. But yeah, they were Jewish and they didn't want to convert, so that kind of ruined it. But anyway, yeah, because I can only marry a Christian because Bible says do not be unequally yoked. Yeah, I will not marry someone of another religion. I mean, I don't have any problem marrying people of other religion as long as they convert to Christianity. Then they are now my religion. So yeah, yeah. But anyway, identity crisis. See, I don't have an identity crisis. I see myself as a Christian who will marry a Christian, raise his children as Christians. So I have no identity crisis. But anyhow, many people do have identity crisis. And unfortunately, identity crisis is rampant among Jewish Americans, but not just Jewish Americans, Jewish people everywhere struggle with identity because, you know, it's no fault of their own. They didn't have a nation for 2,000 years. So there's that gap of 2,000 years where they're struggling to find an identity when everyone else had an identity. They didn't have an identity. And so they're struggling, and that historical struggle with national identity is carried over to modern America, modern Germany, modern England. And you know what the crisis in America is? A lot of American Jews who consider themselves as Jews feel guilty that they're not living in Israel, which is the Jewish nation. Do you see what I mean? It's almost like schizophrenia or kind of dichotomy. Some Jews feel like they're a fraud because they're Jewish and they support the Jewish state, Jewish nation of Israel, but they live in America or England or Germany. They don't live in Israel. So they struggle with that because in their mind, it's hard to reconcile this idea, right? Like I actually come from Korea, right? And that's been a nation that exists for 5,000 years. So, you know, for most immigrants in America, they came from a country and they often go back and visit relatives or, you know, cousins or friends from other countries. You know, there's a constant communication and relationship with the whole country. And there's connection there that is, you know, blood ties, culture and blood ties. But for like Jews in America and England, the problem is they don't have a cultural tie with Israel, right? So they call themselves Jewish and they call Israel the Jewish state and they support the Jewish state of Israel. But the culture of Israel, what we call Sabra culture, and Sabra is a fruit in Israel where outside is tough but inside is soft. So Israel have a Sabra culture, which is kind of an amalgam of Arabic Jewish culture with like European Jewish culture from like 100 years ago. You know, so that's like Israeli culture. And it's kind of military culture because everybody goes to the army. And since the beginning of the founding of State of Israel, you know, it's been very militaristic society to survive in an environment that is surrounded by Muslims, right? And Jews feel threatened by that. So the identity that is forged in the last 50 years, 60 years in the State of Israel since, you know, 1940s has formed a particular identity that is an Israeli identity or Sabra identity. And American Jews and English Jews cannot identify with that culture because how many people in America or United Kingdom who are Jewish will go to military? Like, you know, if you know Jewish American culture, going to the military is not the standard route. I mean, there are Jewish Americans who go to the military, but that's not what I would call the usual route in America. The usual route in America is, you know, they go to high school, they go to college, they start working after college, or they go to graduate school. The military is not really part of that equation. I mean, there are those who go to military, but it's an exception that proves the rule. For majority of Jewish Americans, a majority of Jewish English people. And so, so military culture is sometimes frowned upon. There aren't too many Jewish police officers either because it's not the normal route. You know, stereotypical police officer in a city is like an Irish Catholic, right? And it's a stereotype because it's true. You know, Ed and I, we went on a boat cruise to the Caribbean. And we became close friends with this police officer and his wife, and they're Irish Catholic. And like the wife had red hair and like green eyes. She's beautiful. And the police officer is Irish Catholic, and he is like sergeant or captain in Chicago PD. And they both lived in the Irish neighborhood inside Chicago. And, you know, and we learned a lot. I mean, it's like, I think it's the first Irish Catholic friend that Ed had. All his friends are Protestants. Yeah, I think he's the first Irish Catholic person I've actually met because I live in a black neighborhood in Philly. There's an Irish Catholic neighborhood in Philly, but I went to a Protestant Presbyterian elementary school, middle school, high school. So my friends in the neighborhood were black or Hispanic. And then I go to my school, Christian school, and they're all Protestants, So I think he might have been the first Irish Catholic I got to know personally. It was like 7-day cruise, and we ate together every night. And they're really nice couple. So he's a nice man, and he was telling me, my wife, she saved me. If she weren't for her, I would be totally lost. He loves his wife, but he was telling us, like the two of us, Ed and me, that he's just thankful to God that she stuck by him. And she's devout Catholic. That's why she doesn't believe in divorce. But he's like, if she weren't the devout Catholic that she was and divorced him whenever he deserved it, he said he would have been lost. But he said, she saved me. He kept telling us, she saved me. You know, that's funny though, because this is this really tough guy, and he doesn't give credit to anybody except his wife. But he can't stop talking about his wife. She's like there, sitting there. But yeah, he was like, he's an older guy. It was like, he, uh, this is bad. I don't know if I should share this with you, but his daughter is Irish. Obviously, both of them are Irish. But he was mad because his daughter, Irish Catholic daughter, was engaged to a Italian guy, and he was using all these racist terms. I didn't even know these terms because I go to a Protestant school, so I've never heard of these racial slurs against Italians. I didn't even know they were. I just look at Italians as like white people, and that's like, no, that's like a racial slur. Because I asked them I can't even remember what he used because I still don't know all the racist terms toward Italians. But Ed was saying like he was using a lot of racist terms about his future son-in-law. And he was really mad that she's not marrying an Irish Catholic. But yeah, he just went on and on for like 7 days about it. But and she was like trying to shut him up. But yeah, but he was a pretty rough guy, Irish cop, It's like, yeah, he's like saying, he's like using these racist terms. I mean, he liked the guy, I think. Like he's like friendly about the guy, but he just uses these racist terms. I was like, whoa. Yeah. And anyway, yeah, but I think he preferred that she marry an Irish Catholic. But anyway, but he's Catholic, so he's like, well, at least he's Catholic, So he was happy about that. But yeah, yeah. So obviously he did not have an identity crisis. He knew himself to be Irish Catholic. He goes to mass every Sunday. He does everything that's Catholic. Like every holiday, he does everything that's like Catholic. With everybody who's Irish Catholic. Because he goes to like a church that's like Irish Catholic church. But yeah. Yeah, so he didn't have an identity crisis because he knew where he's from. Like every part of his identity, there wasn't a question mark. But for a lot of Jews, there are a lot of question marks because like they want to feel like Israel is their country. Like, I feel like Korea is my old country. So I say, yeah, I'm Korean. Yeah, I like Korea. I have no problem saying things like this because, it's part of who I am. But American Jews and English Jews, they never lived in Israel. They don't have relatives in Israel, most of them. They don't like Israeli culture. Most Americans that I met were Jewish. Most English people were Jewish. They don't like Israeli culture. They think it's a little too rough, a little too rude. The term chutzpah, like they think it's too aggressive and rude. So like when I was in America, I made a lot of friends who are Israeli, and I love them and I love their culture. But like a lot of Americans, Jews, they just hung out with American Jews. I'm like, why are you in Israel if you're just going to hang out with other American Jews? It didn't make sense to me, Like if you're going to be in Israel, why don't you make some Israeli friends, But they just hung out with like American Jews, hung out with American Jews, English Jews, hung out with English Jews, French Jews, hung out with French Jews. I'm like, what's wrong with you guys? Just mingle, get to know the people in the, the locality. Did I tell you I dated Liat, the French Jew, the prettiest girl in the Ma'o French program, Jewish program? Liat, she's pretty. She's like really white skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. She was like 5 foot. I think she was like 5'9", 5'10". She was so pretty. French. Oh my gosh. I mean, when I met her, she's like the kind of girl that you think of when you think of a French woman, you know? Very feminine. But anyway, yeah. So going back to the Jewish identity crisis, because a lot of American Jews and a lot of English Jews, they're generations in England, generations in America, right? We have some Jews in America who survived the Holocaust, but their culture is more European because they came from Germany or came from one of these European countries, right? From Netherlands or Denmark. You know, Denmark, Copenhagen Jewish Museum is very interesting. You know, I went there because, you know, I try to go to every Jewish museum wherever I go because I'm an expert of Jewish studies. So I went to Denmark and I went to the Jewish museum in Denmark, Copenhagen. Oh, the women were so pretty. The two college students who were kind of, it was in the summer, they were kind of like, you know, there. It was their summer job, and they're two Danish Jewish women. Oh my gosh, they're so pretty. They're like, they're like blonde and blue-eyed, tall. I'm sure they're like 95% Gentile blood, but probably Danish blood. But my gosh, I said, oh man, I mean, I wish I could just convert one of them to Christianity and marry them. You know, I was like, whoa. You know, in Denmark, everybody's beautiful. Jews, they're mostly Protestants, but like everybody's pretty. I was like, whoa. But anyway, yeah, you should visit the Danish Jewish Museum. It's interesting. And I'm sure whoever is working there is going to be beautiful. So it's definitely worth your trip, you know, if you're a guy. But yeah, but anyway, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, but, you know, like, so Jews who came to America after the Holocaust or to England, you know, did I tell you one of my landlords in Israel? I lived in Israel for 3 years, right? One landlord of mine, she is a British Jew who immigrated to Israel, and she's an Orthodox British Jew. And so, you know, I was close to her, and she was telling me she was rescued through kinder transports. Have you heard of kinder transports? If you haven't, Google it. It's a fascinating story. So she was telling me about her life, about how she was a child in Germany, like she's German descent, and there was Holocaust, and her parents were like seized by Hitler. Somehow she managed to escape, and then there was this kinder transport that transported like Jewish children to England. No, actually, she was not an English Jew. Oh, I'm sorry, she's Irish Jew. Yeah, she was telling me, I think the kinder transport is English. But she ended up in Ireland. And she was adopted by Irish Jewish family. Because there's Jews everywhere. Because, you know, for 2,000 years, Jews did not have a nation. So, and I think like, you know, so yeah, there are Irish Jews. Yeah, there's Jews everywhere in European countries. Well, most of them are killed off during the Holocaust, but they moved to America. But, you know, their origin is like in one of these European countries if they survived the Holocaust. There were 6 million Jews killed, so a lot of Jews were killed. But those who survived can probably identify which country they're from. But most of the Jews who survived, because most of German Jews were killed, so there aren't too many but there are actually some German Jews, you know, I mean, because some of them made it alive. Like, you know, Einstein is a German Jew, made it alive. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a number. Did you know that there's a pecking order among Jews in America? Among the Ashkenazi Jews are like European Jews. And do you know where I mean, I'm an expert of Jews, so I read about these things, but some of the things, you know, you have the oral tradition, right? You talk to people and then they tell you things. And when I was at Brown University, and I taught Jewish studies there, I used to be actively involved in the Brown University Hillel House, Brown / RISD Hillel. because I'm like, I teach Jewish studies, I'm Christian, obviously. I'm not converting to Judaism, but I kind of find chaps attractive, Jewish American princess chaps, because they wear nice clothing. They're always nicely groomed, and they come from like millionaire families, so they're like kind of polished. They have like no suffering. Because sometimes women who suffer, it's like, like women who've suffered, you kind of see that they've suffered. It's kind of like Billy Joe, a working class boy, singing about Uptown Girl. Do you remember that song, Uptown Girl? And I think most guys have that. This, maybe it's called the princess syndrome. Most guys who are like working class guys, they wanna like they want to marry a princess. I think maybe all guys have that like feeling. I would love to marry a princess. I almost ended up marrying like a royalty from England. Busy, 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 busy. Actually, I dated more than one royalty in England, in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Europe. Yeah, I would love to marry a princess. I mean, there is something definitely different because I've dated several princesses. I'm just telling you, it's not, you're not imagining things. There are things that are qualitatively different. I miss all the princesses. Like, one of the worst things about being in America is that you don't meet princesses. Oh my gosh, I mean, oh, yeah, there's something really special about them. But anyway, Jewish American princesses come kind of close. Well, not very close, because they're kind of like nouveau riche. Well, I don't want to get into all the classifications, but the thing about the blue blood in Europe is like busy, like she has a royal bloodline going all the way to Medici's in Italy. So one side of her family is like Italian royal blood for like 500 years. And on the other side is this, Scottish royal blood, for like hundreds of years. I mean, can you imagine the security and identity you have when you have that kind of connectivity, like hundreds of years of royal line or blue line? I mean, blue blood? Yeah, there's a complete 100% serenity and security. You've reach don't have that. Even if they like have billions of dollars, you can tell the difference. If you're dating, like I could tell the difference. There's a difference in, and I would say it goes back to the identity crisis, identity issue. With the nouveau riche, there is always this feeling of inadequacy. People who became rich from being poor, like people who work themselves to be rich, they are always trying to prove something. Because that's their life, right? They came from poverty and they had to prove themselves every second, every hour, every day. And yes, they have billions of dollars now, but they still feel like they have to prove themselves. And I think this is where Bezos is. Bezos is the richest man in the world, but he's a nouveau riche, right? He doesn't come from wealth. And so when you look at him, he's always trying to prove himself, like he doesn't act like someone who owns the world, right? He acts like just like someone, like a manager who's trying to get a promotion. You see that with Bezos. And some would argue, well, that's what keeps Amazon growing. And Bezos is constantly expanding because he feels like he has something to prove. But you see it, right? You see it too, right? I mean, he's always trying to prove something to somebody. And that's what makes him a nouveau riche. I think that's the best way to explain it. Nouveau riche are people who feel they have to prove something to somebody all the time. They have an identity crisis, that insecurity in their identity. And that's why, he was married to a beautiful woman, Mackenzie, and he felt like he needed to prove his manliness, right? Masculinity. So he ended up cheating with a woman who's far less pretty than his wife, Mackenzie. Yeah, that's what I mean. And cheating is one thing. He got a divorce. I mean, he didn't have to get a divorce. He could have just said goodbye to the lover, but he didn't. And that's the kind of thing like people nouveau riche do. I think they don't. They're not. They're not like kind of anchored. Like outside like oil money or royalty or nobility, they may cheat around, but they they won't necessarily get divorced because it's not in their interest to necessarily in most cases. It's just it, and so like with the nouveau riche, they have to prove themselves. So they're always trying to prove themselves in the romantic realm as well as in like professional realm. They're always trying to prove themselves. That's how they're nouveau riche. And most American billionaires are nouveau riche. We're a country filled with nouveau riche. So even that term doesn't work in America because everybody's nouveau riche. Therefore, nobody's nouveau riche. But if you go to Europe, then you have that stark difference: nouveau riche versus non-nouveau riche. And even during the Shakespeare times, people mocked the nouveau riche. So the Merchant of Venice. Shylock is this Jewish guy who became a multimillionaire. So he represents the nouveau riche in Shakespearean society. He had wealth, money, power from money. His money can control, like he's lending money, right? But there is powerlessness in nouveau riche as well. And that's what we see in Merchant of Venice, right? He has all this money and wealth and power over people, but because he's nouveau riche, he wants to practice that power. He has to prove himself. He has to prove to others that he has that power. So what does he say? He says, I want a pound of your flesh. And now, it might have happened during Shakespeare's time that someone did that really, and Shakespeare just stole that idea from what he saw. Or maybe Shakespeare is practicing sarcasm to accentuate the fact that nouveau riche have something to prove, right? They need to prove that they have power. And the way they prove that is by practicing that power. And in the case of Shylock, he wanted to prove this power over a non-Jew. And the ending of the story shows where Shakespeare's loyalties lie. Shakespeare condemns the nouveau riche, Shylock the Jew, who represents the nouveau riche, who's a symbol for the nouveau riche, and make him into a buffoon, right? And so the sub-theme of the story can be nouveau riche go through identity crises that make them out to be fools or clowns in the eyes of those around them. And that could be a sub-theme. And so, Shylock's daughter converts and marries a Christian, and that's kind of put a bitterness among some Jews. One of the reasons why some Jews don't want to convert is because of this play, Merchant of Venice, because, Shylock, the billionaire's daughter, converts to Christianity and marries a Gentile who's a Christian. And so it's been a sore point since Shakespeare's time till now. And that's one of the reasons why Jews don't want to convert, because they don't want to fit into that stereotype of Shakespeare. And Merchant of Venice is a very famous play. Everybody reads it, and Al Pacino plays Shylock. I don't know if you've seen the movie, but it's a good movie. If you haven't seen it, I'll encourage you to see it. And so this identity of Shylock the Jew representing a nouveau riche. Obviously, there's multi-layers, right? There's Shylock the Jew who struggles with identity crisis as a Jew, and whose daughter struggles with her identity as a Jew, Jewish princess. And she marries a Christian. That's what I want my Jewish princesses to do. Convert to Christianity and marry me. Why can't I find the Jewish princesses like Shylock's daughter? Like I've dated so many billionaire, like Jew. I don't want to call them Shylock. That sounds bad. I mean, like women who are like Jewish princesses, but none of them want to convert. That's so upsetting because they're like so perfect in every way. You know, if they're Christian, they'll be like perfect. Oh, they're like beautiful. You see some of these chaps, Jewish American princesses. And I also dated French American princesses, Fabs, French American, no, Jewish French princess, Jewish French princesses. How would you pronounce that? Fujips. Yeah, I've dated chaps and fujips. Yeah, beautiful. Millionaire, billionaires, you know, and they're educated, smart. If they're a Christian, they were like perfect. I'm using the plural they because I've dated a lot of beautiful chaps and flips. French Jewish fujips. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so a lot of Jewish Americans, you know, French Jews, American Jews, they go through these identity crises. My best friend, Serge Gordman in Israel, my roommate at Hebrew University of Jerusalem, you know what he told me? He says, I do not tell anybody I'm Jewish. I said, really? Like in America, all my American Jewish friends tell me they're Jewish. They said, no, that's not in France. In France, we French Jews do not tell anybody we're Jewish. Like, that's kind of interesting. It's like really different from America. But he goes to synagogue every Saturday. So I'm like, how do you hide that from your friends? He kind of looked at me and said, well, you know, my closest friends know. But he says, I generally don't tell, you know, other people that I'm Jewish. So they don't know that I'm Jewish. I said, oh, that's kind of interesting. But anyway, yeah. I guess Jewish communities in each country has their own particularities. Because culture is different, right, in each nation. And, you know, I thought that was just kind of interesting, though, that you know, there's so much difference there, you know. Obviously, there's diversity within American Jews, too, so you can't just homogenize them. But yeah. And talking about diversity, there are Jews who call themselves Messianic Jews. They don't want to use the term Christian, and that offends me, I have to be honest with you. But they call themselves Messianic Jews because they don't like the term Christian. They don't want to call themselves Christians, so they call themselves Messianic Jews. Like, but they're Christians. They follow Jesus. They see him as Savior, but they refuse to call themselves Christians. It might have changed for some of them, but it was historically that way. And yeah, I mean, you have to call yourself Christian if you want to marry me, you know. You can't call yourself Messianic Jew. I mean, because it's like, you're like halfway there, but you're not fully there. You know what I mean? Jeez, if you're going to convert fully, dude. John MacArthur is a dude, so I should use the term dude. Maybe I should use the term Smurfette. Smurfette. Papa Smurf. Smurfette. But anyway, yeah. So Jewish identity has often been around the Torah, right? The 10 Commandments that Moses received. And in Israel, the Jewish law, as found in the 5 books of Moses, still form the structure of Jewish criminal law and Jewish civil law. Yeah. And, you know, as you know, Holocaust has been very traumatic for Jewish people. One, because 6 million of them were killed in Europe, in every European country. And there are survivors like my landlord who came over in kinder transport, grew up in Ireland. She's a citizen of Ireland, who immigrated to Israel. And she lives with the knowledge that both of her parents were killed in the Holocaust. And this is the same thing with Emmanuel Tov. Emmanuel Tov is a Dutch Jew. You may not think there are any Jews who are Dutch, but there are. I mean, Annie Frank is a Dutch Jew. Dutch Jews were very successful financially before the Holocaust. So a lot of Dutch Jews were killed off. Near Washington, D.C., there's a museum. What's the name of the museum? It's like a millionaire or billionaire Dutch Jewish family who came to America. and they acquired a lot of beautiful paintings like Picasso, and they have a museum within a walking distance from Georgetown. Um, and I went there because live it and learn it. You know, I'm a teacher for fifth graders at Savoy Elementary School, and so we work with a lot of independent educational agencies, and Live It, Learn It is one of those. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's pretty big in Washington D.C., but you have to teach like in a Ward 7 or Ward 8 school, like in Anacostia, where I taught Savoy Elementary School, to know these things, because they're like organizations that help out low performing schools like Savoy Elementary School, and so live it, learn it, and so I took all of my kids to this museum, the fifth graders. And they went to the museum, had a tour, and they created a little arts and craft, and they were playing with the drums. But that mansion is owned by this wealthy Dutch Jewish family who immigrated to America, many years ago. Obviously, their descendants are still here. They're still like Dutch Jewish family. And they're like multi-millionaire or billionaire family in America. I think they're mostly in New York, but I think some of them are in DC area. But yeah, so this mention, you have Picasso original paintings. They have a lot of great original paintings. Yeah, and so yeah, I took my kids with Live It, Learn It, Live It, Learn It, and also they had a fundraiser. So I went to the fundraiser. Yeah, there are a lot of interesting people you meet from fundraisers, these like socialites, in Washington, D.C., these millionaires and billionaires in this area. Yeah, I'm like, yes, I'm a fifth grade teacher at Savoy Elementary School, and your generosity helps our kids, just to make them feel good. You gotta kind of make them feel good, giving a lot of money to support this thing, But I still get invitations to go. So I was gonna go to the last one. They have a fundraiser every year, like a big main event where all these donors, like wealthy donors, come. And they meet like the teachers, and So I was gonna go, but yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm at Georgia. I mean, I could have just gone because it's like what within walking distance. It's like 5-minute Uber ride away, and I have a car, so I could just drive there. Well, there's like no place to park there, so I would probably have to Uber over because it's like a mansion, but it doesn't have a parking lot. It's like a museum without a parking lot. It's like a private museum, Yeah, but yeah, so they're like wealthy Jewish family. Yeah, so they were wealthy Jews in Holland. And Emmanuel Tove, his father and mother were killed in the Holocaust. Like their best friends and neighbors in Holland called the police on them, and they were arrested and went and got killed. Emmanuel Tove doesn't talk about how he survived though. But yeah, for some reason he survived on his own. I don't know. Maybe he went to concentration camp and then he was able to like escape. I don't know what exactly. There are some kids who went to concentration camp who survived. So he might have been, that might have been his case. He never smiles. He's always depressed. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if he had been concentration camp and he survived, I mean, yeah, who can blame him, right? But yeah, but his mom and dad were killed in the concentration camp. He's Dutch Jew. And he is the editor of the Dead Sea Scrolls Project. He took over from a professor at Harvard, a Presbyterian minister. I think he's Presbyterian minister. He's Presbyterian. I don't know if he's a minister, but yeah, who was the editor of the Presbyterians are everywhere, I tell you. And there's still Presbyterian professors at Harvard. Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, he was the editor for the longest time, and then he kind of passed the baton over to Emmanuel Tove. And when I was in Israel, I took his seminars, doctoral seminars with Israeli doctoral students with Dead Sea Scrolls, and he speaks with this Dutch accent, when he speaks Hebrew. But it was a doctoral seminar for Israeli students, so the whole class was in Hebrew, but he spoke with like a Dutch accent. Yeah, but he's a nice guy. I like Emmanuel Tov. I miss him. I like to see him again. I guess maybe at next conference. He generally comes to the Jewish conferences. Ah, I go to a lot of Jewish studies conferences, but you can't go to all of them. I gotta go to the one that he goes to. Yeah, geez. Yeah, because there are several academic societies, and he's member of most of them, but he doesn't always go to every single annual conference. So but anyway, yeah. Anyway, I wrote a book on Jewish identity. It's a fiction, so it's short story collection. It's called Jewish and Indian and Other Stories by Heerak Christian Kim. So one of the short stories is Jewish and Indian, because when I was in Israel, I had a really close friend who was Jewish and Indian. She went from Cochin, India. She and her family immigrated to Israel, and they were Jewish and Indian in India, and they immigrated. From what I understand, there's like only one family left in Cochin who's Jewish, but there used to be a vibrant community of Indian Jews. Like ethnically, they're Indian, but they converted to Judaism. But it's interesting because in America, when people convert to Judaism, they convert to marry a Jew. But in India, like whole families converted. So she has 100% Indian blood. There's like no interracial marriage. She, like nobody in her family are not ethnically Indian, but they're converted to Judaism. I guess like several generations ago. It might have been a while ago. But so Indian Jews marry Indian Jews, but they're both like ethnically 100% Jewish. Racially, like they're 100% Jewish. So it's an interesting community. So I met her. So like just talking with her, I kind of blended in other Indian Jews I knew, and wrote about that short story. You may enjoy reading it. You can order it through like Amazon or a Barnes and Noble bookstore, and I think other bookstores carry it too. But yeah, when we talk about love and marriage, that's what identity is all about, right? And graduation is a significant thing. As you know, I'm graduating. So for me, from Georgetown, yeah, this is a Georgetown emblem. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm oh yeah, I do have a title, Endless Cycle of Betrayal by Gentiles, because of the story of Emmanuel Tov, not Emmanuel Tov. Yeah, Emmanuel Tov. I mean, basically all of the 6 million Jews in Europe were betrayed by their Gentile friends and Gentile neighbors, right? Because there's no way police officers can know where all the Jews are, right? Somebody has to call 911 on them. How are the police officers going to know where the Jews are? Who the Jews are? Like when Nazis occupied all over Europe, they used local police to arrest Jews, right? But how are local police supposed to know who all the Jews are? So they had a hotline where people call in and report the Jews. And did you read the diary of Annie Frank? You should read it if you haven't. So Annie Frank is a Dutch Jew. She and her family lived in Holland all her life. All of their friends are like Dutch. They have like many, many friends who are Dutch. But they're hiding out because all the Dutch Jews were being rounded up and sent to concentration camps to be killed, like Emmanuel Tov's mom and dad. And I think maybe Emmanuel Tov as well. And so people who went to concentration camp went there because someone made the phone call to 911, right? Because how are Dutch police or Nazis supposed to know who the Jews are wherever they go? Right? Someone has to let them know. And if you saw the movie Sound of Music, have you seen the movie Sound of Music? You know how there's a scene where the young guy becomes a Nazi officer, and then he falls in love with one of the Von Trapp family daughters, and they're escaping to Switzerland. and he calls the police on them, right? So it's like boyfriend calling the police on the girlfriend and her family. I mean, how lame is that? Man, I want to use the term dude, but I've given it to like Reverend John MacArthur, so I can't use it. I was gonna say, dude, what's up with that? But yeah, it's like Reverend John MacArthur took the term. Maybe I should like dissociate that term from Reverend John MacArthur so I could use it. but anyway, so 6 million Jews in America who went to concentration camp, majority of them, maybe over 90%, were betrayed by their Gentile friends, neighbors, boyfriends, girlfriends, like in Sound of Music. If you haven't seen Sound of Music, you should watch that movie. It's a good movie. You could sing along to all the songs, which is always nice. But so Jewish history is filled with endless cycle of betrayal. Look at what happened to Shylock. Shylock is like is a story that takes place during Shakespeare's time. Look at all the betrayals in that movie. And Shylock's like, what does he say? Oh, that monologue? Oh, you gotta see like Al Pacino do it. He's so good. The monologue, doesn't you have I memorized that line in high school. I can't remember it now though. Oh, well. Man, I hate the fact that like you memorize it and in high school and you can't remember it like later. Do you remember stuff you memorized in high school? I guess not. I mean, I think human memory is fairly short. So you forget most of the things that you memorized like when you were younger. Yeah, unless you just graduated from high school and you just memorized it like a few months ago. You may remember. Congratulations to class of 2020. I have to say congratulations to everybody who's in my cohort. TNL 2020. Congratulations, we did it. We survived. No. Did I tell you how horrible our program is in terms of like difficulty level? Geez, we had 34 people who started out in clinical nurse leader program in June 2018, and now out of the 34, there's only 25 of us who graduating. Nine others disappeared from our cohort. Yeah, that's how difficult the program is, but it's worth it. As I said, if you want to be a leader of nurses, this is a #1 program for you. Clinical nurse leader program at Georgetown University. So if you have a bachelor's degree and you have to have a bachelor's to apply, or you're going to get a bachelor's in year 2021, you could apply this fall. Like, like Claire did and like Yingfu did in their senior year in college. Hi Yang, hi Claire. Yeah, they're like #1 and #2. They're so nice, It's like I can't think of any nicer people to be #1 and #2. We don't have like valedictorians and like salutatorians though, I guess. Do they like get like graduate summa cum laude? I wonder if they have that system. I graduated cum laude from University of Pennsylvania. In my University of Pennsylvania diploma, there's like a little mark. They have like little, it indicates the honor. So yeah. I wonder if there's a summa cum laude honor for like Ying and Claire. I'm sure they're like summa cum laude. They're so pretty and bright and smart and nice. I don't even know if they cook though. I have to find out if they cook. I'm not curious because they're like so perfect in every way. Would it be horrible if they can't cook? It'd be like, oh, you could have been 100, but now you are only 90 because you can't cook. So you're not summa cum laude. No, I mean, yeah. I don't know. It might not come out well. Maybe I should say it. But I mean, they're like perfect in a lot of different ways. But I can say, I'm sure they have flaws. I haven't found one yet, but all human beings have flaws. So I'm sure they have some flaw somewhere, But yeah, how you meet people and they don't have flaws? and you're like trying to figure out what the flaws are. There must be a flaw. I have to find the flaw. No, no, I'm not trying to find the flaw. But anyway, yeah. Um, yeah. So, well, yeah. So you got to see my gown. Should I like stand up and show you the gown again? Yeah, this is the gown. Oh, it's like a little bit. Yeah. So, yeah. So this is the gown. Gown. Yeah. Yeah. So, so congratulations to me. Congratulations to all the clinical nurse leaders. Yay, we did it. We're graduating. Yay. August is coming. August is coming. August is coming. August is coming. Yeah. So, yes, I'm really excited, you know. So some of you lucky people may see me treating you in a hospital. Yeah, I had an interview this week. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this show. As you know, it's a daily show, so check back tomorrow. I have a lot of interesting stuff to bring you. If you're Jewish, you should definitely watch this show. Maybe I'll do another show on Jews tomorrow. You'll learn something about your history. You'll feel happier because of it. Yeah, I teach you things that people don't know because I'm one of the leading experts of Jews in the world. I mean, you go to Harvard, I may know more than your Harvard professors. I actually studied at Harvard, right? Under John Levinson. Yeah, Liz, professor of Jewish studies at Harvard. So he's my teacher. But yeah, I may bring in different angles because I don't think he lived like 3 years in Israel like I did. So I could bring an Israeli angle that he cannot. So anyhow, yeah, thanks for joining. Good to see you. Hope to see you tomorrow. Yeah, I hope that you'll be well. Man, I look really red there. Now it's like my red face is blinking. But I still look red. Like, wait, did I walk around in the sun too much today? I'm like worried. Yeah, hopefully I don't get skin cancer. I don't know too many Koreans have skin cancer. I don't know. Do Koreans get skin cancer? I can like find out. I don't know a single Korean who got skin cancer. I think it's like a white thing, like white people their skin is really white. I don't know a single Korean who got skin cancer. I gotta ask my mom and dad if they know any Korean who got skin cancer. Maybe I'll do a show on skin cancer. Just yeah, but anyway, yeah, check in tomorrow. So yeah, thanks for stopping by and check out my book, Jewish and Indian and Other Stories. A lot of fun stories there, so you'll enjoy it. And I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And yeah, so have a good 24 hours. I'm going to bring you data from next 24 hours in 24 hours. Yep. And so I guess I'll bid you adieu, adieu, adieu. I think there's a song, adieu, adieu, in the Sound of Music. If I remember correctly. Yeah, I should definitely see that movie. Maybe I'll like sing some Sound of Music songs tomorrow. Now you have more incentive to tune in. So I hope you do well. I mean, I hope that you will be well and that your children will be well as well. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And so have a good night.